Yeah. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the flow playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat, we trust.
You sound scared.
It's about have the guts, we're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
Welcome to another edition of 5 on the Floor post-game. We are jumping into the Miami Heat's victory at Indiana. Never an easy place for the Heat to win. I think they've only won there 14 or 15 times in franchise history. They get it done tonight, 124-111. I'm your host, Greg Sylvander. With me to talk about Indy, Miami is none other than Alex Toledo. Follow him at Tropical Blanket. And Brady Hawk, you can follow him, thankfully, at his account, Brady Hawk 305. We are going to dive into this matchup. Before I do, want to shout out Discord. I know you heard it in the intro, but if you skip through the intro because you think you've heard it enough times, you got to hear about this. Off the Floor, that is our Discord server where you can talk Heat 24/7. We have all kinds of other channels, so you can basically migrate away from all other social media and just do it all here. We have a bunch of passionate, informed fans that'll be there. $2.99 to join on your desktop, $3.99 from your Apple device. The link will be in the description of this episode. Check it out. Off the Floor. That is our Discord server for the most heat anywhere. I think that's the catchphrase that we are trying to push because it is the spot for that. So this was an interesting game. Pre-show, Brady brought up how there's so many different players that we could talk about tonight, and we're going to talk about all of them. We'll get to everybody. But for right now, Alex, let's start with the aggressive player of the night.
And now it's time for the A-Aggressive Insurance Player of the Night, sponsored by our friend Lynette. You can find her at insurancebylynette.com. That's with 2 N's and 2 T's, insurancebylynette.com. If you need car insurance, renter's insurance, homeowner's insurance, or any other type of insurance, she's the person to go to. Based in Lauderhill, she services the entire Tri-County area here in South Florida, and she will make sure to get you the best deal. She'll probably talk to you about the Heat while you're at it. Reach out to her, insurancebylynette.com. And now, the player of the game.
Boy, Bam Adebayo needed a couple good games. The one in Detroit, he played better, but I think people kind of, one, they lost the game, but two, I think because it went into overtime, people felt like the stats were slightly inflated tonight. That is not the case, folks. Bam Adebayo had a comeback game. 30 points, 10 of 17 from the field, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, 5 steals, only 2 turnovers. He even hit a couple threes, 8 of 9 from the free throw line, so he was getting where he needed to get. This is the type of game that can hopefully springboard better things from Bam. Brady, I'll go to you first. Let's kind of dissect what Bam – I felt like the confidence came back tonight, and that's just been such a big piece of what I felt like that the defense was affecting the offense. And for him, he was just in a slump also. And this is a game where he completely shows out. It's always funny how he seems to show out against Miles Turner to some degree, but now it seems like whoever Indiana throws at him, they threw a new guy at him tonight. Alex is going to have to keep me honest on what that player's name was again. Now we were talking about him on playback, but now I can't remember what exactly.
Enrique Freeman.
Enrique Freeman. Thank you. Anyway, not to sidetrack us, let's talk about Mr. No Ceiling, Bam Adebayo, the player of the game. Brady, your thoughts?
Yeah, so you hit on it. I mean, he needed this more than anybody on this team. He needed a half like that, and that second half was pretty clear. Like that was the old Bam Adebayo. That was like the version we were used to. And I think I'll start here. I think the main reason was it looked kind of like the shot diet that we were used to last season, where he wasn't worried about the new look stuff. He wasn't worried about starting out at the 3-point line. He was just playing that short mid-range game that ultimately got him to this point. and he needs to do that. He needs to play in that range, especially against a team like this where let me just say this deep like the reason we could talk about so many guys from this game is because this Pacers defense is just horrible. Like just a horrible showing. There's just no resistance in general, so it allows so many different guys to be able to kind of have a chance of scoring. But Bam was able to like find mismatches, and he was actually punishing them. Like he had a good stretch there where he was just kind of getting to that post hook. And it was so many occasions where I saw like specifically Tyler and Kevin and guys like that were like yelling at Bam, like, dude, you need to go get on the block because these guys can't cover you there. And he just got aggressive in that stint. It felt like specifically after he like banged his hip on the floor, where he rose up for that dunk, it was like kind of sparked him. It was like, okay, I need to play ball now. And he just started playing out of that. The Duncan started feeding him out of that pocket pass, and then that back-to-back, sequence of threes where he kind of stepped into that transition one. I don't remember many regular season games where he gets that excited over a shot and he's jumping in the air with Kevin Love. Like I just think he needed that badly. Like he just needed that whole thing. And I thought he played once the offense kicked in, and I'm not used to saying this with Bam, but once the offense kicked in, like I thought the defense rose. Like just like watching his activity, like a lot of the steals came in that second half where he was just pressuring them up top and not giving them any chance to breathe, and then they were running out in transition. So he just needed a game like that, and he needs to get back to the old shot profile. He needs to get back to the old Bam. And once he's up to like 20 points and he's killing them inside, and he's killing them with post hooks and short mid ranges, then all of a sudden they're nowhere looking at him on the 3-point line, and he's at a confident point in the game, and then he hits back-to-back threes. That's the profile. He can't be floating out early. He needs to kind of cement himself inside and then be able to do that. But obviously, it helps when you're playing an Indiana defense.
It helps when you're playing an Indiana defense 2 games in a row, because this was a 2-game set up in Indy. They'll play again on Sunday, so we'll have you covered for that game on 5 on the Floor and play back and everywhere else. And Alex knows the handles off the top of his head, or the links, better than me, so he'll give you those. But Alex, your thoughts on Bam? I'm interested. Do you think this had a lot more to do with just Indy being a poor defensive team and Bam kind of got the confidence going? Do you think that they specifically were running anything differently to target getting him into his spots? And then also, because he's been the player of the game every other night, I'll allow you to pivot to Tyler Hero. And just your thoughts there. We're going to get high level on the roster with Bam and Tyler, and then kind of break down the rest of the guys, as Brady alluded to, because there's so many players that did stuff tonight and contributed. So thoughts on Bam, and then let's pivot to Tyler Hero.
So, yeah, I mean, I agree that the Pacers defense has something to do with it. They've been famously a bottom 10 defense over the past couple of seasons. That's continued so far this season. And yeah, I mean, the Heat got absolutely going. I mean, they finished the game with an 86th percentile offensive rating and 91st percentile offensive rating in the half court. And that's not something you ever see from the Heat, right? Even though like their offense has been a little bit better this year, they're usually in like the 60 or 70th percentile, in wins. So the offense was absolutely humming. And it was also a little bit of a weird game in the second half there, because Carlisle was going with these like lineups with none of his main players, and then he brought him back later in the game. So that was a little weird, but none of that is to take away from Bam. I just thought Bam did like what, he played the guys in front of him, right? Like, how when you talk about the Celtics and what they did at the end of last year, it's like, oh, they played the people in front of them. You can't take away credit for what they did. Bam, like for as much of a bad defense as the Pacers are, he did what was supposed to be done. You know what I mean? Like Brady was talking about, he played the game that we've seen from him before when he has these big games, where like he's doing a little bit of everything, right? And I don't think that he was forcing shots at any point. It never felt forced like some of these other nights where he's just trying to get shots up for the sake of it. Some of the like the Charlotte game, and just some of the tough offensive games he's had recently, where he's getting up a lot of shots and not making a lot of them. It did not feel like that at all. He was getting the shots in the flow of the offense. The only big difference I would say, as far as like from what they've been doing, I just think they're doing the Duncan Bam 2-man game stuff a little bit more. And I just think it's so seamless. Like I know we've already hammered the point a lot since the beginning of the season, especially recently, but just them playing together more is definitely a positive, because man, it's so pretty to watch every time, man. Like I never get tired of it. It just really gets that offense moving. And no, I don't expect it to be this potent every time, like with, results wise for the Heat, but I just think it's one of their best forms of offense. And I think it gets Bam moving, right? I think it kind of takes him out of positions to sometimes, like when they would run stuff for him, as a mid-range guy, he would kind of slow down, maybe take the contested middies and make them, half the time. And that's cool too. But the good thing about the Duncan Bam two-man game is it really gets the whole offense moving, including Bam. And I think you take advantage of him as a roller, whether, all the way to the rim or as a short roller, him as a passer. I mean, I just think it really gets him going. It gets the both of them, Duncan and Bam, in a rhythm. And that's been, I think those are two guys who, like, when they're playing really well, it's usually an indicator that the Heat are playing well. So, yeah, I mean, it was a huge game for Bam. There's no doubt about it. And I think the Heat's offense was awesome. And a big part of it as well, like Brady talked about, were the steals. Like, I just think the forcing the turnovers, man. They got another 16 steals tonight, 20 turnovers for the Pacers, 10 for the Heat. We've been saying this stuff for years. When they play a game like that, where they're just that dominant when it comes to making plays on defense and getting all the transition points that you can get, because they had a pretty good game in transition as well, as far as actually converting there. Like, that's the formula right there. And what's funny, that the offensive numbers are so staggeringly positive for the Heat, is that they were not shooting the three well for, like, I think the first half and then through the early third quarter before they really started blowing up. So, like, it's not a game where, they made 23s or anything like that, and that's why the offensive rating is so high. No, they were just slicing and dicing the Pacers defense. Bam was a huge part of it. And honestly, they needed that, because on with the way that Bam has been playing on other nights, if Tyler has a game like he had tonight where he just, wasn't as dominant as he's been, I think that maybe they lose this game. Like, if you don't get Bam going, this is one of those games where it's probably a close game towards the end. But between Bam and another player we're going to talk about later on, like, those guys to me were really the biggest difference in this game.
Yeah, that's you alluded to a defensive stat that I really want to dive into. Let's go to the defending the house segment so we can talk about that now.
And now it's time for our Defending the House segment, sponsored by our friends over at The Real Estate Shop. You can find them at realestateshopfl.com. That's with 2 P's and an E, realestateshopfl.com, or at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram. This is Javier Iglesias and Amanda Martin. They help buyers and sellers in real estate. They're nimble and protective of their clients. They service the entire Tri-County area. That's Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties with a proven on-market strategy. The Real Estate Shop sellers earn the most money in the shortest time frame because Amanda and Javier have a deep understanding of the local market. So check them out. Again, it's at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram, realestateshopfl.com, or give them a call at 954-268-9812. And now, who defended the house?
The Pacers damn sure didn't, because that team does not play defense. But as Alex mentioned earlier, we're going to lean into the 16 steals by the Miami Heat. The Pacers had 20 turnovers, and 16 of them were a direct reflection of Miami Heat defense. This is something we've wanted them to get back to. Brady, did they play zone at all tonight? I maybe missed that. I don't remember that happening at all.
No.
That's an interesting move against this team with their high-powered offense, or what's perceived to be a high-powered offense. Your thoughts on the defense tonight, leaning into the creating turnovers and things like that, but also just overall your thoughts on how they defended Indiana, who sometimes can be a pretty high-octane offense, or that's what they're advertised as.
So, yeah, that was the key, was the turnovers, and the fact they were able to finish off those turnovers. Like, the fact that they were able to, they were running in transition really well, which feeds into the Pacers defense thing. But Bam had 5 steals, which was a big part of what I was talking about before in that second half, where he kind of cranked it up a little bit. But the guy I want to mention, because before I mention him, I'll say Kevin Love had 4 steals. That's just another random one. And he was just getting his hands on stuff. Like, he had the one, pick 6 where he jumps the passing lane and had, a 30-second transition push for a layup. Like, it felt like it was a slow motion. But Haywood Highsmith had 1 steal, and it just feels so wrong to see that. Because if I could see the amount of times where I saw Haywood not get credit for a steal but force the steal, at least a quarter of the steals from Miami tonight were forced in some kind by Haywood Highsmith. He deserves so much credit for what they were doing defensively in this game and to be honest, like the last 5 games, he's been such a solid rock for them on both ends. But defensively, it's like he's just face guarding these guys, and the way he's just like he's ripping the ball or the deflections. And the thing that we probably don't give him enough credit for is the team defense, like the help wide. Like he is just all over the place. Like he is helping, recovering, cutting off, repeat, and it's like he doesn't get enough credit for what we're seeing from that development. And I'll kick this into, because I know we're talking about the defense here, but I want to kick this into this other topic, which is talk about like a flip of a switch of 2 guys fitting into their roles so much more by putting Haywood in the starting lineup and Jovic off the bench. Like it's really funny to think that we probably didn't talk about this sooner. The fact that Haywood is just having to kind of play that weird bench role and Jovic being stuck in this kind of limited offensive starter role, and seeing what it does for Haywood defensively, that he could just play off of the main guys. What do you have, like 6 to 8 relief points to start in that first quarter? Like it was just like they're going to leave him open a good portion of the time if it's on slips to the basket or from 3, and he was able to capitalize off that. And I just can't say enough about Nikola Jovic in this game. Like that was the best half I've seen him play, I think. Like legitimately that first half, like the finishing, like the slow motion offense type play, the way then he'd speed it up in transition, the defense, the outside shooting, that was just like a really great first half. And it just shows that when you free him up a little bit, when he's not put in this box and he's not allowed to just play his offensive game and just play in general, it does a lot for his game. It just really does. And that feeds into the Haywood thing, because it puts Haywood in this position where I think he just makes so much more sense in that starting lineup. And I think a lot of people like it even more because he's playing the 3. I mean, he's not as limited to have to like guard up, and he can actually play his own defensive role, and it makes him look even better out there. So credit to Miami. I don't know if Kevin Love is going to be the long-term starter here. And obviously when Jimmy comes back, things are going to look different, and Haywood probably does start at the 4 at that point, and things look a little different. But I think the key is I kind of think Haywood needs to stay in the starting lineup 100%. It just feeds off these guys, and it just puts everybody, it seems like, in their role, where Jaime and Jovic kind of be that upside players off the bench. So I'm interested to see if they do that. But 100% it's staying with that lineup against Indiana, because it just makes too much sense.
Yeah, Haywood Highsmith, 6 of 6 from the field. I mean, I think that Alex, it's probably permanent that he's in the starting lineup and Jovic ends up off the bench. I'm glad to see that Nico still has a role, because there was questions whether he would still get minutes if he did get, flexed to the bench. And I think he still can. Your thoughts though on just as we kind of, I'm not going to ask your thoughts on Josh Richardson, because that is a weird thing that I think Spo's trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I think he goes away from him at some point. So the other guy off the bench tonight that was really key was Jaime. 10 points, 4-6 from the field, but 5 assists. He was really doing a lot of things for the offense. Your thoughts on Jaime before we get to our final segment, the X-ray, the play of the day?
It's good to see him kind of get going in that way again. I think that was kind of my main takeaway. It's good to see when he's doing the post stuff and when he's just kind of getting into that flow like he was. The playmaking was nice, like you mentioned, 5 assists to 1 turnover, 4 of 6 from the field, and he got, I think he had a bunch of steals too, if I remember correctly. He had a couple steals as well. So yeah, he's just playing his role, man. And like even before, when maybe the scoring wasn't as prolific as you'd want it to be, he was rebounding. The defense is solid, like I mentioned. Jaime is a very all-around player, and I think we all expected a little bit of kind of like that 6-man scoring jump this year, and it hasn't exactly taken place that way yet. But the more that they empower him, I think the better. Because although I like the way that he can like fit into other lineups and do the the dirty work stuff, his rim pressure, the way that he can get to the rim and slow the game down and make decisions from there, whether to score or to pass, like he's very natural at that. And him getting into those spots more is ultimately going to be a positive. So it's nice to see Jaime get going. Completely agree about Haywood. He's been awesome. Just an elite defender, continues to be that. And I agree that he should probably stay the starter, because, yeah, I just think Jovic is somebody who needs a little bit more, needs to touch the ball a little bit more, even if you're not going to make him quote unquote point guard. Like, get him going in transition. And I think it's hard to do that with the starting lineup, especially on offense. Like, I think it's hard for him to get the touches he wants because, It's a lot of catch and shoot threes, and he's good at that. But if 90% of his game is that, I think you're getting diminishing returns, and Haywood is just more fit to kind of provide those relief points. And Jovic get more touches off the bench. Completely agree with that. I'm interested to see if that's going to be the move when Jimmy's back. I'm expecting it, but Spo has just kind of he's thrown some curveballs here, right? Because like Nico was kind of struggling a little bit, brought him off the bench. I don't know, like he looks at Nico playing well. It's like, okay, he deserves a promotion back. I'm more than fine with him just getting the same type of usage and minutes off the bench. But sometimes like we think we know what Spo's gonna do and he goes the other way. I doubt it's gonna be K Love still starting, but who knows? I know we're gonna talk about him in but yeah, I'm sorry, I'm rambling. It's nice to see Jaime get going again. And I wonder if we're going to see more of him getting back to his office, right, with the post stuff. I wonder if this is the start of that.
Yeah, that's what they're going to need with the second unit until they figure out what Terry, and we'll get to him kind of as we back clean up on the show tonight. Until they find out what his role is going to really be, they need Jaime to be the primary initiator and scorer off the bench, and he did that tonight. Let's get to our last segment. We'll do the Mobile C-Arm and Staffing X-Ray Play of the Day.
And now it's time for the X-Ray of the Play of the Day, brought to us by our friends over at Mobile C-Arm and Staffing Services. Nelson and his team will bring the X-ray equipment and the staffing to you. If you work in a hospital or a medical office, get a consultation today at c-armandstaffing.com or give them a call at 561-891-9620. Their fleet of trucks at your service. Again, it's Mobile C-Arm and Staffing Services, 561-891-9620. And now, the X-Ray of the Play of the Day.
So we are not going to confine this to only one play because the homie Kevin Love played only 12 minutes and he had a robust 15 points, 6 of 8. He was crazy. Brady brought it up pre-show, and it was the right call for us to bookmark this segment for him and kind of close out the show because he was instrumental in them kind of really figuring this team out tonight and then being able to, just continue to grow that lead. So definitely want to get both of your thoughts on K-Love, and then we'll close with just final thoughts on this win up in Indiana as they wait and play the next one on Sunday. But first, Kevin Love's stint there was crazy, right? Like a shot in the arm is, to say the least. Brady, your thoughts?
Yeah, you mentioned his 15 points. I mean, they were all in 5 minutes. It was in the first 5 minutes of the third quarter. It got to a point where it was like, all right, he had 13 points in this quarter, and Kevin Love has 13 points in this quarter. He was legit the whole entire offense. And I feel like not always in this way, but he always seems to have like the most explosive short stints. Like he doesn't get long periods of time, but he does something that you're like, okay, he's still providing something. He's not like that. The outlet passes to begin the game deserve a lot of credit. It's one of the reasons they stayed in it early and had a flow early was like Haywood got a bunch of his relief buckets because of Kevin Love. But the third quarter specifically, like the fact of, I mentioned the one earlier, like the pick six where he goes and he kind of slow paces it and lays it in, the 3-point shooting where I'm not going to say they're helping off Kevin Love because you're not going to do that, but you're less worried about him when you're blitzing a Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo pick and roll and then helping over off Kevin Love. Like he's going to have certain pockets and he was taking advantage. And he's one of those guys that we don't talk about enough, but like when he sees one go in, like he is like absolutely ignitable. Like Spo uses that word all the time for Tyler and Duncan, but Love, every time I see him hit a shot, like in his head, like he's deadly after that. And that's kind of what we saw. And I think this also feeds into the bigger lineups thing. It really does, because I mentioned Haywood at the 3, but it really allows him to like actually mismatch hunt. Like it allows him to find advantages. And if it's not him, he's going to put Bam in a position where he can mismatch hunt. But it felt like the early pockets of that third quarter, like when he had opportunities around the rim, it was because he just takes advantage. Like he really knows how to use his size and take advantage of those switches. And that's pretty much what he was doing. And that's kind of the advantage of why a lot of people want to see that added size, because it puts less pressure on the guard room, puts less pressure on Tyler and Terry specifically, but it also gives you easier opportunities. So we saw that specifically, but he was just ignitable. Like that's just what you're getting from him at this stage. I did not expect that we'd be asking for this or watching this from Kevin Love at this stage of the regular season this year, especially considering the fact like he had such a long ramp up because he was out for so long. He doesn't look like he's out of shape to me. Like, he doesn't seem like he's out of it to me. And the fact that he's in this starting position, once again, I don't think this is a long-term thing. Obviously, when Jimmy comes back, things will change. But he's doing a really good job of holding it down. Like, I think they have the option now where they look at certain matchups. Like, there's certain teams I look at, like, across the schedule, and I'm like, that could be a Kevin Love starting game. I don't think they'll be afraid to pull that lever. Like, they can immediately go to that because they trust him. And he just these short pockets. Like, he doesn't play a long time, and he's effective in these 4 to 5 to 6 minute stints. And it's useful. It's useful for a team with depth like they have. So a huge third quarter. I mean, they don't win this game without that.
So true. An interesting part of this would be, when we talk about integrating Jimmy back, and I think he's more questionable than he's been for this next game. So that bodes well for the Heat, but I think he'll definitely be back when they get back home. Alex, do you think that there's any possibility that they could insert Jimmy into the starting lineup and keep Highsmith and Love both in there? Like, is that
I was thinking
even
the same thing.
possible?
I was thinking the same thing.
I mean, because Spo's always trying to trick us, right? So we should probably stay on our toes here. Your thoughts on if that's viable, and just I guess on the horizon of Jimmy coming back, your thoughts on what this team might be able to throw together here to salvage this road trip, because there was a while there where it looked like it could go south. They've got another victory along the trip, which I think is important, but they can close it out in Indiana against a team that doesn't guard. So they have the ability to score enough to beat them. They showed that tonight. So your thoughts on what the lineups may be, and then just closing thoughts on tonight's victory.
So it was going through my head when you guys were talking there about the lineups, and like I mentioned earlier, it's just sometimes you think we know what's supposed to do. Like, I wouldn't expect that to be the lineup, but I do think it's viable, especially like what Brady was talking about with certain matchups. If you're going to play teams that are a little bit bigger, have a big front court, I really like the idea, because it's kind of like the role that they've had Jovic in a lot of times, where like they'll have Bam guard like the 4 that's more dangerous, and then they'll have Jovic trying to like compensate and guard the 5. And it's like, yeah, you live with the the returns from that, right? Because it's not like they're most teams are not going to go to that 5-man that Jovic is guarding, because usually Jovic is guarding like somebody who's more of a traditional 5. They're not putting Jovic to guard star 5s or anything. But still, like he was compensating a little bit and having to, I think, do a little bit more than he's capable of, at least right now. Like he's had okay moments there, but Love is just more suited for that role in the starting lineup than Jovic, in my opinion. Love is more than fine just taking catch and shoot threes. Love, he's still able to do the rebounding and the outlet passes in the starting lineup. It's not like at Jovic where he needs to handle the ball a little bit, right? Like Love it's perfectly suited for that. And I think the defense, whether with Bam or without, it's better than you think. He's not like an amazing defender. Obviously, he still can get taken advantage of in space, and he will send help. But I just think like he does a better job than you would think when you consider like the foot speed, right? He's not like the quickest guy on his feet, but he always does a solid job. He had an awesome defensive game tonight, not just the 4 steals, which is crazy enough, but like just a lot of times where he was in the right spot. And we've said it so many times since he's been here. Just positionally, he's solid. He's a very smart player, has awesome spatial awareness on both sides of the floor, just knows where to be, when to move, like when to seal for position down low versus spot up. Just these little things that I think he makes him so much of a cleaner fit in that starting lineup, especially against bigger teams. So yeah, I would be a fan of that if they could somehow keep Haywood and Love in there with Jimmy, and send Terry to the bench. Unfortunately, I just think Terry, it is what it is. We've talked about it a lot at this point. He just has not looked like the same player he did last season, and I've said diminishing returns like 30 times since the season started. I know I keep using that, but it's just like that's exactly what's happening. You're just not getting you're not getting not only the productivity, but the efficiency is way down. The defensive concerns are what they are. It's just such like it feels very obvious that at some point he's going to get sent to the bench. Not that that'll fix everything, but I just think like, there's some tinkering that can be done, or at the very least experimenting. Because what we've seen so far, like this rotation has not been like, there's no like, okay, this is the best version of the rotate. They haven't found that yet. So they should not be like stapled to this starting lineup, or specifically Terry starting with the starter. So yeah, I'd be open to that. More likely, I would say probably it's Haywood starting with the same backcourt, Love and Jovic off the bench. But we'll see. Like I'm not 100% sure. I do think it's worth it though. And as far as other takeaways from the game, you know, you guys, when we were talking about Bam earlier in the show, you guys mentioned the free throws, and that was you know, a part of it. He got to the line 9 times, and that was one of the biggest differences in this game compared to the other games without Jimmy, is that they got to the line twice as much as the other team, where that was kind of the other way around the other couple of games without. So I don't know how like sustainable that is, but obviously Bam was a huge part of that. So if you can, you know, like I mentioned before, just keep getting him in rhythm, get him to kind of move downhill with the Duncan Bam 2-man game. I just think like stuff comes out of that, right? Like Bam gets in a rhythm, his confidence goes up, the offense gets moving. So I think keep playing off of that. I think that's really positive. Other than that, like what I mentioned about Terry, I still think they got to do something about Josh, even though I think like tonight he wasn't too bad. He had a couple of mistakes, but he wasn't too bad specifically tonight. I just
wasn't too bad.
No, like he wasn't terrible or anything tonight. So I don't want to make it sound like he had a bad game, but I'm still wondering, like, you know, do they play Burks or Larson ahead of him at some point soon? Because I'm still of the mind that those guys showed more with their respective skill sets. So yeah, those are just kind of you know, the things that I'm thinking about right now.
I'm glad you brought up the Terry thing, because you're right. Eventually, I think that trying him off the bench is the move. I'm interested to see if it happens when Jimmy comes back, or if they
One thing I will
that.
say, sorry, it's just like, I know that we keep throwing that in there. I don't think it's going to be like a perfect solve, because, you know, you can get in the way of like maybe Duncan's confidence and Duncan's rhythm if Terry's going to have the ball a lot more. Like I still think you got to have the touches for Duncan and also Jaime. Like I think
Jaime especially,
yeah, you would have to find that balance still. It wouldn't be an automatic solve, but I just think him with the starting lineup so far, like maybe things change, but so far it's been an abject failure. So that's why it's like, you know, maybe they got to experiment with some stuff.
The East is forgiving. The Heat are 5-6. They're still very much in the thick of the conference, and that is a good thing. They get a win in this NBA Cup schedule that I'm not even going to delve into the details of, but it's a good thing that they got a victory along the way there. Thank you to Alex. Thank you to Brady. We will have you covered for the Heat and Pacers on Sunday. I think that's an earlier tip. Let me confirm that quickly. Is it a 5 p.m. tip?
Yeah.
5 p.m. Eastern tip. So we'll have you covered for that. Join us on Playback. Definitely subscribe to Off the Floor. And let's hope the Miami Heat get a 124-111 victory on Sunday as well. Thank you for joining us. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.